All right, we're back for another week of Colorado Spring football, practice number 7, I believe.
7,
So approaching the halfway point, and Adam, the Buff's out there. Beautiful day out there, except the kind of windy, so that's why we're doing this inside. But Buff's getting a lot of work done.
Yeah, spring in Colorado always keeps you guessing. There were some pretty big gusts down there. Not a whole lot to garner, but we get a chance to interview guys, and it's interesting. Jalen Sammy is one of the guys I talked to, and talk about a guy that's getting a lot of work this spring. He's not even a year removed from that torn ACL that he had surgery on, and I mean he's pretty much exclusively with the ones on that D-line because of the lack of scholarship bodies there, and he's gotten a lot better. He's lost a lot of weight, came in 360, 370 range. He's now down to about 320.
Wow.
Looks a lot better. Big challenge for him, and we heard Mel Tucker when I asked him about Jalen Sammy, was that he's playing with better pad level now. That's a big challenge for him. He's 6'6". He's a real tall guy. And we saw with Javier Edwards during his junior season when he got tired at times, if you don't play with good pad level, you're driven downfield. It doesn't matter how much you weigh. And so that's a big challenge for Jalen Sammy. He says his knee swells up a little bit here and there, but he's made really good progress in the last year, both losing weight and getting healthy. They're going to need him this year.
Well, I saw him walk out and come to you to talk, and I mean, just his body looks. I mean, he looks athletic now, whereas he looked like, just a big kid when he first got here. But he looks athletic, and another question you asked, or a question you asked Mel Tucker was, because of the lack of bodies, does that really hurt what you do this spring? And he said no. I mean, they're kind of going full bore, even with kind of limited numbers at defensive line.
They're lucky that they've had no injuries there, because if injuries piled up there, I don't know how you'd practice. They've got 5 scholarship defensive linemen, 3 walk-ons. That's 8 guys. And that's what's made me think it's going to be hard to have a traditional spring game, because if you split up the squad, you'd have 4 guys. And that's assuming that the next group of practices there's going to be no injuries, no guys banged up there. So that's a tough deal there. I've written about it this spring. Jimmy Brumbaugh, it's like, welcome to Boulder. Here's what you have to work with. And fortunately, he has Mustafa Johnson and Terrence Lang. But my goodness, numbers there are not looking too good. And they'll get better this summer. But still, high school defensive linemen, you want to put those guys in the incubator for a while. They're not going to have an opportunity to do that with some of them.
Yeah, well, and like we mentioned a few times, there's a lot of reinforcements coming. There's, I think, 5 defensive linemen that are set to arrive this offseason, including John Tavius Johnson, who appears to be still planning on coming back to Boulder. All signs point to that. So a grad transfer from Auburn. So that would help a lot to keep those freshmen, like you said, in the incubator for a year.
Yeah, and, they're not going to be exclusively a 3-down lineman front like they pretty much were under Mike McIntyre in recent years, once they switched over when Jim Leavitt came in. But Jalen Sammy says they're doing a lot of 4-down set stuff now too. So, I mean, lack of scholarship bodies, they're going to need some of those guys to be ready right away. Yeah.
I talked to Alex Fontenot today. You talked to him recently as well. But, Alex, really just kind of trying to embrace that opportunity of the opportunity to start. He said in the previous years, you kind of knew who was going to start. It was Philip Lindsay, it was Trayvon McMillan. Now, he just kind of embracing the opportunity, and more of an opportunity without Bo Bishrat there. We talked about that last week, moving to tight end. So just trying to embrace that. And that's a running back group that not a lot of experience, but I think there's some talent there.
Mel Tucker again said, we're going to have a lot of guys playing in that role. I think running back committees can work. I didn't like the way they did it when Clayton Adams was the running backs coach, because it was like they were giving a running back a series, then switching them out. I think if they
were sticking to a schedule rather than just going with a hot hand.
Exactly. If a guy's rolling, then you let him roll. But with the situation they have, they've got a lot of running backs that are pretty talented and not a whole lot of separation. So it makes sense. Keep them fresh, but be smart about that rotation. Alex Fontenot, though, we've only had a handful of open practices since he's been here, but he's got some get-up. When he gets to that second level, he's got some explosiveness. The key with him has been patience and pass protection. If he gets those 2 things down, I think he's going to surprise some people, because he's not a guy that a lot of fans are talking about.
Sounds like he's gotten better at that, and he's up to 195 pounds, played last year at 190, so doesn't sound like huge, but for a running back his size, I think that's a significant weight gain. You talked to Akil Jones, inside linebacker, and we know Nate Landman is the guy there, but there's a lot of competition for that number 2 spot.
Another guy that I don't think people talk about enough, Akil Jones a year ago was their most improved linebacker. It seemed like he was really turning the corner, and then he suffered a high ankle sprain in camp last year, and he tried to come back from that too soon, re-injured it. So it was basically a lost season for Akil Jones. Rick Amboa graduates, and he's running with the first team a lot this spring. They're switching up the way the different inside linebacker positions play a little bit, but Akil Jones says they're catching on to that. He's a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if he's starting when they face off against CSU, a guy that just kind of a well-balanced guy, a little bit more explosiveness than what we saw at Gamboa, but not obviously quite as intelligent in terms of the film study at this point. But he's come along a long way since he's gotten here.
Well, speaking of inside linebacker, I talked to Davion Taylor, who plays inside linebacker a little bit on the third down sets. He moves in there, but mainly that star position. And you've talked to him this spring as well. But Davion, a little bit bigger than the stars they've had at Georgia. But Mel Tucker today said, yeah, we've had some big stars, some guys. I can't remember the guy he mentioned, but had a guy that was 6'6" playing in that spot. So, but he mentioned a bigger guy allows him to really play the run. But Davion talked about how he's getting much better at pass coverage, and that he's really enjoying that, and that's been a big change for him. But he enjoys it.
Well, I'm anxious just to see the differences because it is a different position than what the buff backer was. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that Mekhi Blackman's practicing at the star position as well as a 160-pounder. So clearly there's going to be some nuances to this to where they're not always right up on the line of scrimmage because Mekhi Blackman, obviously at 160, couldn't have played the buff backer role the way they had it in the previous scheme.
Yeah, it sounds like there's different types of stars as well from things I've been reading and hearing. So Mekhi and Davion Taylor, obviously different types of stars, right? They're different types of bodies. But anything else we want to recruiting. There was a big weekend this last weekend. 6 guys here this weekend. Just kind of, you're the recruiting guru. So just kind of give me your thoughts on the weekend.
All high priority guys, and the headliner of that group, Jack Ray, former Ohio State commitment, a 4-star offensive tackle, couldn't have loved his trip here anymore. And it seems like he's really bought into what this staff is trying to sell on the recruiting trail. I don't know if it's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, but I would be honestly at this point surprised if he doesn't pick Colorado, just how highly he was talking about it. He went to Auburn on Monday, and I asked him about that trip, and he kind of turned the conversation back to Colorado. So that's always a good sign. Devin Grant, a defensive end type that they're actually recruiting as an outside linebacker. Really, he said, I could see myself playing at Colorado. So a couple guys that really stood out. Chubba Purdy, a dual threat quarterback from Arizona that they're pretty high on, seem to like it a lot too. He's going to go out to Louisville. So we're starting to see some momentum with recruiting. One commitment at this point. We talked about Carson Lee after practice on Friday. If you can get a Brendan Lewis, another quarterback, a dual threat that visited here recently, or a Chubba Purdy on board, those quarterbacks can really be a catalyst for your recruiting class. And if you can get a Jack Ray, that raises some eyebrows. Okay, Colorado is starting to get some momentum with recruiting. And Cole Taylor from the Western Slope, who got an offer from Colorado in late January and has since added 21 other offers, is going to be here on Friday for an unofficial visit. So starting to see kind of, again, a little bit of momentum, and they're already starting to line up some official visits for early June. And I think that's a great idea. Wait till these kids get out of school so you can have a full weekend with them. And the weather in June, you can bank on a little bit more than the spring here in Colorado.
Yeah, a little more predictable there. But, boy, if your first 2 commitments can be Carson Lee and Jack Ray, that's a pretty good start to your class. Every quarterback's got to love that. Steven Montez probably doesn't care because he's not going to have to get to deal with it. But that's a pretty good start if they can get that. So Buffs doing well in the spring, off to a good start in recruiting. And Adam and I will be back on Wednesday to talk about that practice.